fast approaching a global transport crisis. As more people need to travel further and faster than ever before, conventional trains, planes and automobiles simply won't see us through future decades. It's the end of the road for transport as we know it, and the question is, what will come in its place? "30 years from now, oil reserves will have run dry, there'll be no fuel, the combustion engine will be dead, and the conventional car condemned to the scrap heap. A bleak future? Well, perhaps not. A new generation of vehicles could save us from this grim fate."
I like this car. It's very quiet. The response of the accelerator is very good.
This car drives like any other. Its top speed is 150 kilometers per hour, and it can travel some 450 kilometers before it needs to refuel. But when it comes to the engine, it has more in common with the space shuttle than its petrol-powered cousins. Ever since the car revolution took off with Henry Ford's production line, vehicles have relied on the internal combustion engine. As we start the 21st century, it's still at the heart of the car. The technology has been tweaked and stretched beyond recognition, but there is a limit beyond which this dirty, smoky machine cannot be taken. And when the fuel runs out, there'll be no place for the internal combustion engine to go. And that's where the Necker 4 comes in. It's the latest in a series of alternative power cars to be developed by Daimler Chrysler. It's an electric car, but unlike any that has been seen before. Until now, these cars have been weighed down with heavy batteries. They can manage only low speeds over short distances and need to be recharged for long periods. So Daimler Chrysler decided to take a different approach. What if the electricity was made on board the car itself? And what if it could be generated using the most abundant fuel of all, hydrogen?
We need here no fossil fuels. It means so long we have water energy, the sun is shining, we can produce the hydrogen. And in the same time we don't pollute the environment.
The electricity is made inside a fuel cell, a box where hydrogen and oxygen are combined to make water. During the reaction, energy is released, electrical energy that can be harnessed to drive the car.
When you push the accelerator, the hydrogen goes through this tube into the gas channel, and it provides our fuel cell with hydrogen. From the other side, we supply the oxygen from the air, and we let it react it inside the fuel cell to electricity.
Fuel cells are simple, efficient and pollution-free. Powering them requires only hydrogen obtainable from water and oxygen from the air. Which is why one country with plentiful supplies of both is planning to convert its entire transport system to fuel cells. High in the North Atlantic is the country of Iceland. A clue to why they're thinking so radically can be found on the farms of men like Olaf Eggersten. His farm has its own generator, the cowshed is air-conditioned, feed is dried, and there's even a hothouse where he can grow Mediterranean fruits. And the energy to do this costs next to nothing.
The land here has many resources. It's just a question of making the most of them.
Iceland sits on the point where the continental plates of Europe and America meet, creating a geothermal hotspot. Steam and water bubble out of the earth, providing both heat and energy to drive turbines. Elsewhere, there are abundant waterfalls from melting glaciers, providing non-stop hydroelectric power. Iceland already generates 2/3 of its domestic power from these waterfalls and geysers, yet this uses just 1% of the country's natural resources. So, these two men, Hjalmar Arnason and Bjorn Skulason, plan to tap this energy source further and produce hydrogen from water, taking Iceland, and perhaps the rest of the world, out of the carbon economy completely.
With respect to all the sustainable energy we have here around us and the manpower we have in Iceland, I believe that Iceland will become the first hydrogen society in the world.
Arnason is a member of Parliament and a visionary, and he heads a committee that is dedicated to making his dream a reality. He and Skulason have set up a company to draw up the blueprint for Iceland's future, and perhaps the future for the rest of the world. And they've been captivated by the Neckar project's success.
The changes with fuel cells could be, to begin with, the buses and the such vehicles. Then you have passenger cars developing, and hopefully the automakers will be mass producing fuel cell vehicles in 2004 or 2005. Hopefully, shortly after that, we will have mass production of ships which could be powered by fuel cells. In the long run, we could also power airplanes with fuel cells or with hydrogen, since already all space shuttles and so on are powered by hydrogen.
To fuel this ambitious plan, Iceland is going to need to produce hydrogen on a large scale. But with nearly unlimited geothermal and hydroelectric power to hand, it'll be in a position to manufacture the gas cheaply and in bulk. And that's not all.
What is more, we see that within not many years, we might start exporting, and we will pretty soon start exporting hydrogen from Iceland to the international market and obviously make money. Perhaps we will end like Kuwait of the North. That is our future dream.
Within 20 years, every car, truck and bus in Iceland will run on a hydrogen-powered fuel cell. And it may not be too many more years after that before we're all driving cars with fuel cells instead of engines and Icelandic hydrogen in place of Middle Eastern oil. Hydrogen-powered cars may not be the only new way to get around. Japanese scientists may already have found the ideal energy source for the transport of the future in the form of a powerful natural phenomenon. It is one of the four fundamental forces of nature generated by molten metal at the core of the Earth. And now it's being used to push a train along a track. That force is magnetism. These giant magnets power the fastest train in the world. They're so strong that they have to be superconductive and cooled by hydrogen. They're coupled with magnets on the track, which attract and repulse to pull the train along. The result of all this high-tech engineering is a train that could travel from London to Paris in less than an hour.
We have developed the maglev with a top speed of 500 kilometers an hour for commercial use. This system's target is to compete with domestic flights, which connect the big cities. The maglev system will cut the journey time between the cities of Tokyo and Osaka to 1 hour, quicker than an aeroplane. I'm sure this system will be adopted in the future.
If this sounds familiar, it's because it is. Magnetic trains have been around since the 1960s. The desire for high-speed intercity links pushed everyone to look for alternatives to the traditional rail system. A floating train seemed the answer. Using magnets to levitate the vehicle above the track removed friction, and the electromagnetic repulsion that drove the train forward was pollution-free and virtually noiseless. It may have been groundbreaking technology, but will it ever be promoted from test track to transport network? In 30 years of working with maglev, Professor Tony Eastman has closely followed its development.
Maglev has been around for a long time, but it's not yet really found application. I think the costs of it are such that people have been very hesitant to commit to an implementation.
In the meantime, maglev was still being tested, and tested, and tested, without ever making the leap to fee-paying customers.
The reason was cost. Maglev is exceptionally expensive, and the comparatively cheap traditional trains were becoming almost as fast.
High-speed rail systems have really closed the gap. They have now advanced to 300 kilometers per hour and can go to 320 or perhaps 350 kilometers per hour. I believe that high-speed rail is a more economical system, while not quite so fast. The increased costs that one has to pay for maglev are just not worth the reduction in trip time that such a system could offer.
Super-cooled, super-powered magnets may provide speed, but at a price. The technology was simply too expensive to be of practical use. But now, maglev may have found a new lease of life, not at 500 kilometers per hour,